While most eyes stay fixed on the biggest leagues, there is a whole world of football beating just beyond the headlines, where matches are delayed by trains and not humans, but animals become unexpected pitch invaders. Here, the so-called forgotten pitches still remind us what football used to be. This week, we're joined by the Sweeper podcast. A podcast that ventures where others don't. Based in Vienna, they cover the hidden gems and secrets of the Austrian Bundesliga and the most obscure and obscene places in the world. For those tired of the same old headlines, this is your passport to football's hidden gems.
In this episode, you will discover stories you've never seen, stories you've never heard, and why the soul of football lives far beyond just the top 5 leagues. I mean, we talk about that regularly, but we have a real expert that will tell us what you should check out next season. Plus, you will also get to know what the best fan bases in Austria are and really underrated football culture. And with that, welcome to the Football Ultras podcast.
Yes, a new guest, a new episode. Lee, starting off this episode, what is the craziest football story you have witnessed in real life?
It's a big one, start off.
Yeah, that's really tough. I'll go for one on the pitch and one off the pitch. So I'd say the craziest thing I witnessed on the pitch was probably, it's a real minnow story, but San Marino, the world's worst national team, hadn't won a game for 20 years, hadn't won a game for 140 matches, and I saw their first win in 20 years. That was last year against Liechtenstein in the UEFA Nations League. So that was super cool. It felt like being there for a bit of a moment of history. And on our pod, we've built up a bit of a cult around San Marino. So that was super cool. I would say off the pitch, I almost got caught up in a riot in Brussels a couple of weeks ago. That was kind of crazy. That was at the Belgian Cup final. The Club Brugge fans went mad, and I was arriving from Bruges into Brussels on the day of the cup final. And suddenly, as I was coming out of the train station, fans started running past me, pulling balaclavas over their heads and going to fight with the riot police. So that was pretty crazy.
And how did you get caught up in it? Like you were just standing at the wrong time at the wrong place, or?
Yeah, exactly. Just coming out of the train station with all of the Club Brugge fans, and then suddenly some of them just started sprinting past me, and I was kind of in the middle of it all, out the front of the Brussels Central train station. I had to kind of dive out the way, and then I went to a bar across the road and just watched the scenes unfold. It was pretty crazy. There were like 200 fans in the main square, just really going at the riot police, and yeah, it got a bit nasty in the end, actually.
Wow, and there was no other club involved. It was just them, Club Brugge fans against the police.
Yeah, no.
Or was it like another Brussels club involved there?
No, so Anderlecht were their opponents in the final, but Anderlecht fans were nowhere to be seen at that point. It was just an incoming train from Bruges. The riot police were waiting for them, and then they really went for it. I mean, it actually turned out pretty nasty during the course of the day because the Club Brugge fans ended up getting the metro to the ground. I don't know what they did on the train, but they put the train out of action. And so they had to end up walking all the way to the King Baudouin Stadium, which is quite a way away from where they were. And they went through the district of Molenbeek, which has a lot of foreigners, a lot of immigrants living there. And yeah, they started beating them up, and it got really, really unsavory in the end. So I was quite happy from a personal safety point of view that I managed to get out of that.
What goes through your mind when you have almost visited the whole world of football and you still get caught up in those places? Do you understand them, or are you? What are your thoughts about that when you see that?
I mean, I'd say the great thing, not the great thing in this case, but generally one of the things I like most about football is that it always surprises you, and you always see new things no matter how many games you've seen. So personally, of course, I know about the hooligan culture. I've never seen it before. So I suppose it just shows you that like you'll keep going to football, you'll think you've seen most things happen, and then you really haven't.
Yeah, until you hit Belgium.
Yeah.
Crazy.
You mentioned San Marino. What makes these obscure places so interesting compared to the big games you also have visited?
I think part of it is a love for travel. So you just get to see places that are otherwise, pretty, sometimes unremarkable, sometimes beautiful, but you wouldn't go there. But I think mostly what I'm kind of sick of is just seeing the same teams in like the last stages of the Champions League, like Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, like great clubs, of course. But I think football's become too predictable. A lot of it revolves around money. And I guess I'm kind of a football romantic in that sense, that I like to I still like the stories, the things that really bring emotion. And for me, that's not elite football anymore. It's the things that happen elsewhere. Like when San Marino won that first game in 20 years, that actual elation, there were kids running onto the pitch. People couldn't believe it. Like it was just such a feel good moment. And I feel that I don't really get that buzz from elite football anymore.
But when you mentioned predictable during the big games, I can see where you're coming from. But for our listeners, and when you go to a game of San Marino, or when you go to a game in Liechtenstein, what is it that makes that less predictable, or what you're seeking for, and why should our listeners go to these countries?
I think it's also just it feels to me a bit more exotic. Like when I was growing up in the 90s, and you watched a Champions League game, you didn't really know anything about the players. Like you see Sturm Graz, Rapid Vienna, and it seemed so incredible. Now in this like data-driven world, you have stats and knowledge about literally every team. And I like the fact that sometimes I just go to these places and I have no idea what I'm going to expect. I like discovering that organically. And I think that a lot of your listeners, if they like ground hopping, which I presume they do, and if they like travel as well, then I like to be surprised. I don't want to know everything. I like to really feel like I'm going somewhere where not everybody knows about and not everyone's been there. I think that's kind of what draws me to it.
That's great, man. I think our listeners can definitely relate with that. They love ground hopping. And on that note, you mentioned San Marino. You've been to Liechtenstein. Could you name us maybe your top 5 hidden gems in football? Like these small places. Could be those small countries, random places to go to?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. I had to think a lot about this, but I would go number 5, Gibraltar, smallest member state in UEFA, but it's a super cool away day. When I went there, like to get into the country from Spain, you have to cross the airport runway and you have to make sure that there are no planes.
Right, you walk through the runway, right?
Yeah, you walk across the runway. And then I watched the cup final there. That was absolutely amazing. And it's a cool blend of like English and Spanish culture too. Number 4, I went for Vorarlberg in Austria, which is like the far end of Austria from Vienna, where I'm based, and that's like near Switzerland.
No way.
The fan culture there is so different from the rest of Austria. It's so cool.
What makes it different? Because I've heard like some Austrians, they've told me, oh, this is not Austria, this is Switzerland.
Yeah, I know sort of where they're coming from. I hear that sometimes as well, but it's really fan oriented in the sense that they set up loads of food stands, lots of activities and things inside the ground, which you actually don't get in the rest of Austria. So I saw a game like a couple of months ago in Vorarlberg, and you can just have a pint by the side of the pitch at the end of the match in a top flight game, which is really, really cool. You can't really do that in many places.
Also, I imagine the landscape there is also quite beautiful, isn't it?
Incredibly. Like anywhere, I mean, any train journey you get through like the west of Austria, through Switzerland, through Liechtenstein, incredible. Just like rolling hills, scenery, like lakes. It's just gorgeous. It's like one of the only places I'll go on a train journey and I'll stop working to look out the window.
It's right next to Liechtenstein as well, right? Vorarlberg?
Yeah, exactly. So you've got Liechtenstein, it's kind of sandwiched in between Austria and Switzerland.
Yeah.
And actually we did a challenge like a little while ago where we went to see 3 games in those 3 countries in one day. Actually, we did it in the space of 7 hours and with no car. So we saw a game in Vorarlberg, then in Liechtenstein, and then finished off in Switzerland. It was a super cool day.
That's a really nice ground hopping tip. So that's your number 4 then. And then you have a top 3 that's even better.
Yeah, I mean, 3, I think you've been to Prague, right? That's absolutely incredible. I mean, it's perhaps not so much a hidden gem, but there are lots of clubs there aside from the big ones. Obviously, you've got Slavia and Sparta, but Dukla Prague, a really cool club as well. I feel like Czech football just generally is amazing, has a lot to offer.
Wow.
I think it is spoken a lot about by Czech fans, but it just simply isn't recognized by us Europeans. But whenever I go to a Slavia or Sparta game, the fans always write me that Prague has so much more to offer. So it's good you highlight it. Are there more clubs than the one you mentioned in Prague? What makes it so special, Prague?
I think it's just I think I had a really memorable experience there at the Prague derby. It was the first time I'd ever been like pitch side at a game like that, and the tifos and the fan culture is amazing. Like I like the fact that every part of every beer you buy at Slavia Prague goes into helping the ultras create tifos. So I think those 2 clubs definitely are really cool. Dukla Prague are a bit of a cult club in the UK actually, because there was a famous song in the 1980s called, by a band called Half Man Half Biscuit, and it was called All I Want for Christmas is a Dukla Prague away shirt. So actually, Dukla Prague have kind of like a following in the UK as well, and Bohemians as well. I think they're a pretty cool club, but I don't know much about them.
And then you have a number 2.
Number 2, I went for Liechtenstein. So the most beautiful ground I've ever seen ground hopping is Balzers, which is like in the south of the country. And Liechtenstein doesn't have its own league, so their clubs play in the Swiss league. And so Balzers were playing against like the Lugano reserves a couple of years back. But it is the single most beautiful stadium I've ever seen. That was amazing.
Oh, wow. I have to check that stadium right now. What makes it so beautiful?
Well, you got like the mountain
landscape
backdrop on one side. Yeah, so it's the landscape, the mountain backdrop behind the corner flag, and then literally a stone's throw away, you have the Rhine and then Switzerland on the other side. You're right in the corner of like southeast Liechtenstein. And they were super cool there to us. They were really nice. Like we had some guy who couldn't work out why we had chosen to come to Bowser's. And then he said, hey, I'll get you some Liechtenstein shirts. So the people there are just super friendly.
So about this Liechtenstein, do you notice it's hard to go to these games, or is it easy to go to these games?
Yeah, I mean, you literally just roll up. They're never sold out because the whole country has a population of like 38,000 people. So it's not like you're really competing for anything.
How do you get there, though? Like, you get there from Austria, but there's no airport in Liechtenstein, right? What's the closest one? Do you know that for our listeners?
I would say probably either going to Zurich or Innsbruck or Munich or somewhere around there. You can probably just get the train down. I mean, yeah, granted, it's not the easiest place to get to in the world, but it's worth it once you're there.
It's worth it, yeah.
Train connections are good there?
Yeah, I would say so. I've always been able to. I mean, usually I get the bus over the border from Austria, but transport in that part of the world, like Austrian trains, Swiss trains, is pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, and then time for your big number one.
I'm excited now to see that, hear that.
Well, number 1, I've been to quite a lot of games in Portugal, but away from Lisbon and Porto, Madeira, Cristiano Ronaldo's home island, is my number 1. Incredible weather. I was there in January and the temperature was like 25 degrees, which was perfect. And I was there for the Madeira derby between Marítimo and Nacional. Thankfully, it wasn't at Nacional's ground because I don't know if you know, but their games get called off quite regularly due to fog up in the mountains. But this was at the Marítimo Stadium, and the fans, they were so friendly, so nice. There was no like nastiness or anything. I think both of the fans were just happy that they didn't have to travel to the mainland for an away game. So yeah, that
for once.
Yeah. So that was amazing. Madeira is class.
Wow, and I can vouch for that, by the way, lads. Been there in 2022, and we went to a Nacional game at their stadium. So when they were still in the second division. Horrible to get. Honestly, it's a beautiful place as well, but it is the ride there, such a bumpy ride. It's very far up in the hills. So I think the Marítimo Stadium is a lot bigger, and it's a lot easier to get because that's quite in the city in Funchal, right? Kind of.
Yeah, it's down by the coast, so it's pretty easy to reach. It's like a 20-minute walk from Funchal.
Beautiful. Madeira is a must check. Have you been there, bro?
No, but it's high on the bucket list.
That's the only place, like I've only ever been to Portugal in Madeira. I've never been to Portugal mainland. But Madeira I've been, yeah.
Oh, really?
Right, and Austrian football, I feel like, is also oftentimes overlooked by people from outside of Austria. Even in Germany, it's being overlooked sometimes. So what would you say is the difference between, or what's special about Austrian football compared to Germany, which is obviously same language, similar culture, but what's different there? What makes Austria special?
Well, you're right, because the football cultures are very similar. But what I really like about Austrian football is you kind of get a bit of a window into the future, because a lot of the players that end up making really great careers in the likes of Germany or England or, other big countries in Europe, they start out in Austria. So it feels like you're getting a window into the future. Players, Red Bull Salzburg have produced so many players, the likes of Erling Haaland, Sadio Mane, Karim Adeyemi, but the other clubs as well. You've got like Alexander Prass, who's now in the German Bundesliga, Nicholas Kuhn, who's doing well at Celtic, Gernot Trauner at Feyenoord. So it's like the whole league is just constantly producing waves of young talent.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Oftentimes it's, as you said, it's a look into the future. Many of them make their way to Germany, but even abroad. Premier League has seen some stars coming from Austria. You mentioned Salzburg. What's the feeling towards them? Because I know, in Leipzig, we've got Germany, we've got the same thing. People don't really like Leipzig. Is it the same in Austria? There's a hatred towards RB Salzburg because they're owned by Red Bull.
Yeah, maybe the hatred is slightly, just ever so slightly less than in Germany because Red Bull is an Austrian company based near Salzburg.
Fair.
But I think,
Fair.
generally speaking, yeah, there is a lot of hatred, especially from the bigger tradition-steeped clubs like Rapid, Austria, Vienna, Sturm Graz. And so I think last year there was kind of, when Salzburg didn't win the league title for the first time in 10 years, I think there was like a mixture of feelings. So there was like 90% happiness that Red Bull Salzburg finally hadn't won the league. And then from every club apart from Sturm Graz, there was like 10% regret that it wasn't them that won it.
Fair. Like, it could have been them, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned Sturm Graz, Rapid, Austria. There are so many big clubs in Austria, right? For still such a quite small country and so many big fan bases. So do you have a top 5 there? Top 5 fan bases in Austria?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I need to make a caveat first and say that there are so many that I'm going to obviously miss some out. And like Austria, Vienna can be great. Lask is really good. Red Bull Salzburg are great for European matches, but not for domestic games when the fans don't really come. But none of them made it into my top 5.
Wow.
So my top 5 starts with first Vienna. I think they're a really cool club in the second division. They're based in the north of the city. They have a derby game against another lower league club called Sport Club, and that derby is like the derby of love, they call it, because the fans they don't sit apart, they mingle with each other, they drink a beer together, and that's a super cool vibe there.
Wow, okay. First Vienna is quite an old club as well, right? They have I think they had some European success even in the past, right? Like really like Mitropa Cup, something like that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, good knowledge. Yeah, years and years ago. So they're the oldest club in Austria.
Oh, the oldest.
And they have English roots as well, so that kind of draws me to them a little bit.
But yeah, you're number 4. If number 5 was first Vienna.
Number 4 is Austria Salzburg. So this is the Phoenix club that formed after the takeover by Red Bull Salzburg. They opted to go a different way and start in the lower leagues, and they are actually about to get promoted to the second division. So they're doing pretty well, and their fan base is really cool. They didn't want the takeover. They didn't want Red Bull's money. They didn't want to be treated like that. And so they restarted their own club, and the atmosphere there is fantastic. I actually watched the game there from the stadium roof when I was commentating there, and that was really cool.
From the roof? You were on the roof?
Yeah, right on the roof of the main stand.
That is great, man. And so that must have been, when did Red Bull take over? 2005?
Yes, yeah.
So they're 20 years old, and that's like Wimbledon, right? Like not exactly, but it's like a fan-owned club formed by the fans. I love that. And do you think they can actually go to the Bundesliga eventually?
I would really like to see it. I mean, I'd mostly like to see Austria Salzburg play against Red Bull Salzburg like regularly. That would be super cool. And actually, they played each other in the Cup 2 years ago. And I went to that game, and it was the first time that Red Bull Salzburg and Austria had played each other since the takeover. And the atmosphere was really spicy. There were so many police at that game. And the Austria Salzburg fans had an amazing tifo. It was a picture of Mozart hitting a Red Bull over the head with a violin. It was really cool.
Yeah, that is really creative. Really nice choice there. So that's your number 4. I'm curious to hear the top 3. I think 2 of them I know, but the third one, let's see.
So number 3, I've gone for Wacker Innsbruck, who are currently in the 4th division of Austrian football, but they've just been promoted. And because of away fan restrictions in the Bundesliga, which I think is capped at a maximum of 10%, Wacker Innsbruck currently have the biggest away following in the country. They're a proper cult club which went bankrupt a few years ago, and they're starting to work their way back up. And to every away game in the 4th division, they take over 1,000 fans. And I went to one of their away games a couple of months ago, and it's like watching football in the old days when you see pictures of people standing right next to the touchline. There are so many people, they don't even fit in the stands, and they're all just standing around the actual pitch. It's quite something.
Wow, that is beautiful. They were even in Europe, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, they're former Austrian champions, so they've played in Europe a number of times.
Big club, yeah. So that's the biggest club from Innsbruck then. It's not WSG Tirol then, that's why. They're quite small. Wacker Innsbruck are bigger, right?
Yeah, much bigger.
Okay, so that's your number 3. top 2. I might know what clubs, but what is the order here?
So number 2, I've gone for Sturm Graz. They are the reigning Austrian champions, double holders, although they didn't win the cup this season. They are competing for the league title again. Their stadium, I think you've been there, right? Their stadium is pretty aging and pretty old, but the atmospheres there are really strong. Like the crowd just don't let up the whole 90 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I loved it. I've only been once to the derby. So that was a historic game, and it was a great game as well, 5-2. Loved the atmosphere from both sides. You could really feel that in Graz. It's a really special football culture, I think. The stadium plays a role as well. It's quite, as you said, aging, not big. I think they couldn't even play Champions League there, but it has a certain charm, I think. So nice choice. And then your number 1 can only be one club, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know what my number 1 is. My number 1 is Rapid. They have just incredible fans. They have, I think, by far the best fan base in Austria. They are the best supported club in Austria. I read a statistic a few years ago that they're actually supported by, I think, like 3 in 10 football fans. I don't know if that's actually true. It's really hard to gauge, but they're very popular. And in their block vest, like in the Westtribüne behind the goal, they have some really creative and inventive tifos. And their fans have been through some stuff the last years. They haven't won a trophy since 2008. But the support is always immense.
Yeah, I think I've said it also a lot in my videos. I think Rapid Wien has one of the best fans in Europe. I don't even think like it's Austria compared to what I've seen. Over 150 football matches. They are definitely in my top 5 like best fan support I've ever seen. And also when you look on the internet and search for their tifos, etc., I can say this is a solid top 5.
Yeah, valid. No, but really nice to know you're from an Austrian football expert and for our listeners as well. So if you want to go to Austria, those 5 would be interesting if you can manage to get tickets, of course.
Yeah. Lee, are you up for some dilemma? So we quick fire some questions to you and all you have to do is answer them.
Oh, yeah, I'll give it a go.
Okay, we start off with the first dilemma. I have 2 tickets in my hands. The one ticket is for the North London derby and the other ticket is for the Wiener derby. Both on the same row, both the same seat. Which game would you go to in the stadium?
I'm going to the Vienna derby.
Why?
I'm sorry, but my Austrian prejudice is very strong here. I mean, it's one of the most played continental derbies in. I think the most played continental derby in Europe.
Wow, you're English, but you don't follow the Premier League.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that is really remarkable. Why is that?
I think it's just become. You know, like loads of the clubs are now owned by nation states or hedge funds or just corporations. I feel like it's all about money now. The fans aren't really a focal point anymore for the clubs. It just feels like a money machine and I've just fallen out of love with it.
Yeah, following up to this next dilemma, Lee, would you, because you have the English roots after all, would you say if I have again 2 tickets, one is for a stadium with a more reactionary atmosphere. And the second one is with an ultra block and the rest is pretty quiet. But it's more robotic. Which 2 games would you choose here?
I've got to go for the best whole stadium atmosphere. Like an ultra block can really make a difference. But if you're sitting in a game where all you hear is the ultras, then it's not worth it for me.
That's fair. We have the next one, which is, it's back to the Salzburg topic. So you say that most Austrians are not really the biggest fans of Salzburg, but let's say RB Salzburg win the Champions League. So that's number 1. That's the option 1. Or no Austrian club ever plays again in Europe.
I mean, I'd have to say RB Salzburg winning the Champions League because then it would do a lot of good work for the whole Austrian coefficient, and then other clubs would have the opportunity to have big European nights again. I don't think they would be that spiteful that they would never want to play in Europe.
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying that's a bit too much. So the hate for Salzburg isn't that big that they would sacrifice playing in Europe forever. That makes sense.
Unless I'm underestimating it massively, then
maybe we can make an exception for Austria Salzburg fans, but the rest maybe they would prefer playing in Europe.
But in all fairness, what Lee said, I could completely resonate with it because what he said makes so much sense to me about the Champions League is so predictable right now. Like you just know in the semifinals, it's going to be teams like Inter Milan, Barca, Real Madrid, Bayern. Those teams
PSG,
are always
Man
there.
City.
It's never Rapid Vienna, Villarreal, Valencia, Porto.
And Villarreal made it a few years ago.
In the semifinals of the Champions League?
Yeah.
No, Europa League.
No, they were in the semis.
Yeah, it's true.
but that was
Okay, but
an exception.
Ajax of course made it. But of course I'm against the whole principle of Red Bull taking over these clubs. But if Red Bull Salzburg would make it to the final, I think it would still be exciting. Or would you be fully against it?
No, I mean, I'm just. I've got nothing to do with the Champions League. I'm a fan of a shit club. Okay, we're back now, but no, I can look at it from an outsider's perspective, and I'm not the biggest fan of Red Bull but I respect that they're growing in a way. They're growing football with a strong youth system, with like growing young talents, also local Austrian talents. So I get that they're also. Somehow Austrian football is also benefiting from it. Of course, like I think they made the whole league stronger. You would agree with that, Lee, right? That Salzburg's collaboration with Red Bull has made Austrian football as a whole more competitive. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, there's always the counter argument to that of then it became a monopoly and it was really hard for other clubs to win the league.
Sure.
But generally speaking, yeah, I think they have done a lot of good things as well, right? And you have to acknowledge that. It's very easy, I think, for very traditional football fans to just immediately dismiss Red Bull. And there are a lot of things that could be criticised. But by the same token, the youth development work is excellent. The sort of standard philosophy between all the Red Bull clubs, it is a model of how to run a football club or a football club network. And I think that you do have to see the good along with the bad as well, rather than just dismissing it as bad.
Yeah, for sure. That's what we try to do on this podcast. Look at both sides, and it's nice to get that insight from you as well.
Lee, one more dilemma. I am a big fan of Austria. I love going there. You have, of course, the beautiful landscapes. So the first dilemma is I have a match ticket in a beautiful landscape in Austria, with a nice little stadium where you can go to.
Vorarlberg, for example.
Vorarlberg. Or I have a second ticket for Edwando Metropolitano, like a big modern stadium, VIP, nice seats, front row. You can watch the game up close, and you have amazing seats, or a plastic seat, but in a beautiful landscape. Which would you choose?
I'm going for the first one, for sure. I'm going for the first one. I think I'm definitely motivated by ticking off new grounds, so I'd be even more motivated if it was a place I hadn't been to before. But it just doesn't appeal to me going to I don't know, it's hard to explain even to you guys, but it just wouldn't have, if I'm in Madrid, I would love to go to that game, don't get me wrong. But
The ticket goes with hospitality, VIP, food.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care.
A warm seat, Lee. Come on.
The warm seat doesn't matter to me. I don't mind getting cold and wet at a game. I went to a Coupe de France game between one of the overseas territory clubs from Tahiti a couple of seasons ago, and they travelled 16,000 kilometres to be there. And the game was played in absolute lashing rain, and I would say it's the second best match experience I've ever had. I don't care about.
That is so crazy. Yeah.
Mate, honestly, I'm so glad we're doing this podcast because now I get to know you as well. I think you are one of the realest and most insane groundhoppers out there. So I'm definitely going to follow you from here, and I highly suggest our listeners as well. The Sweeper podcast, and you have one more podcast. Can you tell us about that?
The other Bundesliga is the Austrian football one. We have a short weekly update on all things Austrian football. And at the moment, there's a super cool title race because a very provincial club called Wolfsberg could actually win the Austrian Bundesliga if they win their final two games. So there's a lot to look forward to in Austria at the moment. And the other one that I do with my co-host Paul Watson is the Sweeper. We will try and take you to places that you might never have thought of going to before. We'll go to live games. We'll tell you stories from pretty much every country in the world, whether it's Greenland or Micronesia or wherever it may be. So we really try and basically focus on every country in the world outside of the top 5 European leagues.
Also for our listeners, these dilemmas, please let us know in the comments down below what you think and what you would choose, because we love reading the comments.
For sure.
Closing this episode off with our favorite segment, What the fucking hell is that?
Yeah, well, I guess I've mentioned some already, such as almost getting caught up with the Club Brugge fans. But I would say on that trip, there was another one. So on the very same day as the cup final, I went to a lower league game in I think it was the fourth division of Belgian football, crossing Schaerbeek against Reren Einatten. And crossing Schaerbeek had already won the league. And at the end of the match, they brought the league trophy onto the pitch on the back of a donkey. So there was just a donkey carrying out the trophy. And the reason is because this particular region of Brussels, they used to transport sour cherries to Brussels market on the back of the donkeys. And then they used to make the special sour cherry beer in Brussels. So they have a big, long history of donkeys. They have a donkey on their badge, and they even brought out the trophy on the back of a donkey, which was very funny.
Like that was, I'm going to Google that right after the episode. I want to see that.
Yeah, I've got videos, yeah.
That is so random. That's so random.
I will include them in the video.
And we also, to finish this episode off, the subscriber questions that our listeners have brought to us. And the first one would be, since you guys, you've been to so many games, Lee, is there one game that you still want to go to, or one certain place you have never visited you want to go watch football in? That question came from Alex.
I've got two, if I'm allowed to. The first one will be the other Portuguese islands, so Santa Clara and the Azores. I really want them to reach European football this season, and for us to have a crazy away day between, say, some Portuguese team in the middle of the Atlantic and someone in Eastern Europe. That would be really cool. And the Azores look absolutely beautiful. So I would say the Azores would be one. And the other it's got to be Greenland for me. I'm fascinated by the place. They have the shortest league season in world football. It lasts only 1 week, and all of the teams... It's because of the weather, right? So it's 90% or 80% covered by ice. And what that means is that they can only play football between May and August time, I think. And so they have a 1 week season in August in a rotating, the hosting rights alternate between the cities, and all the players, they go to this city, they all sleep in sleeping bags in a sports hall, and they play a week-long football tournament, and it's the shortest league season in the world.
So they play every day, they play 7 games or multiple games a day even. Or how many teams do they have in that league?
Well, they do regional qualifiers first, but the actual final tournament is usually contested by 6 or 8 teams. Greenland's such a massive place, but they only have 56,000 people, I think, or something like that. So there's not many football teams. Yeah,
nobody lives there.
Lee, thank you so much for your insights. We will link your podcast down below in the description. Thank you guys again for listening to this episode, and we will see you guys next Wednesday.